Right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to Accra, Ghana. We're going to be looking at babies who grow up around like a ton of languages.
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff. And we've got two sources. So there's an academic article,
Okay.
and then it's a summary article that breaks it down a little bit. But basically, we're going to be trying to figure out how these babies, how they experience language
Yeah.
from basically, the moment they're born, right?
Yeah. And it's really interesting, because I think a lot of times we think about language development as pretty one-to-one,
Yeah.
like, one child, one caregiver, one language.
Right.
But in Accra, it's a totally different story.
So what's like the most surprising thing this research found?
Well, it turns out babies in Accra are exposed to like between 2 and 6 languages
Wow.
from birth.
2 to 6 languages. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How did they even how did they track all that?
So they did interviews with the caregivers, and then they also had them keep these day-long logs to basically track every language the babies heard. And they studied 121 infants between 3 and 12 months old.
Okay, this is already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
So it's not just the number of languages, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something about the caregiving situation in Accra too.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So these babies typically have between 2 and 6 caregivers.
Wow.
It's not just like mom or dad,
Very interesting.
extended family, and even neighbors can play a really big role in raising the children.
Right.
And this is common in these compound buildings where basically, multiple families live together, sometimes, multiple generations.
So like a real community effort.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how that could lead to such like a rich multilingual environment.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The researchers made a distinction between direct and indirect language input.
Oh, okay.
So direct is when the caregiver is actually talking directly to the baby.
Right. And indirect is when the baby's hearing the language, but it's kind of in the background, maybe from the radio or adults talking amongst themselves.
Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah.
So did they find that the babies are, like, learning all these languages through both direct and indirect input?
So that's really interesting. The local languages, like Akan, Yu, and Ga, were mainly learned through that direct interaction with the caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
But English, which is the official language of Ghana, was mostly picked up indirectly.
Okay, so there's a clear difference there.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think it shows how these babies are really like picking up on the ways that language is used in their community, right?
Yeah.
So the local languages are the languages of the home, of the family, of everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
English is more the language of like formal settings.
Yeah.
Things like school or government.
So they're already picking up on the social context of each language.
Exactly. Wow, that's amazing.
And there's another really interesting finding here. So despite all this variation, right, with the number of languages and all the different caregivers, the total amount of language that these babies hear is actually pretty consistent throughout their first year.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not like they're gradually easing into like this multilingual world.
Right.
They're just like fully immersed in it.
Exactly. For these babies, multilingualism isn't something that they're learning. It's just like their reality.
Yeah, this is really, really eye-opening. Makes you wonder, like, is there something about the way that caregivers interact with these babies in a multilingual setting that's different?
That's a great question. And actually, that's something we're going to get into in just a minute.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. You were just asking about, how caregivers might interact differently with babies in a multilingual setting.
Right.
And what's interesting is that research suggests that direct interaction, those back and forth exchanges, they can be like super important for language development.
That makes me think about those local languages, Akan, Yu, and Ga, that were mostly learned through that direct interaction, right?
Yeah.
So could that give these babies like an advantage in learning those languages?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. While this particular study didn't measure the baby's actual language skills, there's other research out there that suggests that kind of like, personalized language learning can be really beneficial.
That's incredible. Okay, back to these caregivers for a sec.
Yeah.
We know there's multiple people involved.
Right.
But Who are they exactly?
So, as you might expect, mothers are the primary caregivers.
Okay.
They were involved with all of the infants in the study.
Makes sense.
Fathers play a pretty significant role, too.
Okay.
Providing language input for almost 87% of the babies.
Wow. So it really is like a team effort.
Yeah.
When it comes to language learning.
Totally. And then you've got grandparents, siblings, other relatives, even non-relatives, all like contributing to the mix.
That's amazing.
It really does take a village. And the study found that most of these caregivers actually speak between 1 and 3 languages.
Wow.
To the infants.
So each baby is getting like this incredibly rich and diverse language experience.
Yeah.
Did they find any patterns in terms of like which languages were used by different caregivers? Like would mom speak one language and dad another?
So that's a great question. And, that kind of touches on the strategies that some bilingual families use.
Right.
But this study was looking at multilingualism, which, adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
So they didn't specifically look at whether families were, adopting a particular language strategy or anything like that.
So some families might have like a more planned approach.
Yeah.
While others, it's just kind of like whatever happens, happens.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what makes this research so insightful, It's giving us a glimpse into like the real world language experiences of these babies.
Right.
Without imposing any like preconceived notions about how multilingualism should work.
It seems like we're just like scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
Of understanding how these babies learn and process multiple languages.
Right.
Are there any like long-term implications here that we should be thinking about?
Definitely. And the researchers were very careful to point out that this is just like a snapshot of these babies' lives during their first year.
Right.
So how these experiences evolve as they get older, that's really a question for, future research.
It would be so fascinating to see like a follow-up study.
Yeah.
That tracks these same babies over time,
Great.
Do they continue to be exposed to all these languages? Do they become fluent in all of them?
Yeah.
And like how does their overall development, relate to these early multilingual experiences?
Oh, great questions. It's a field that's just bursting with potential,
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember how we were talking about direct versus indirect language input?
Yeah, yeah.
There's another kind of interesting layer to that finding.
Okay.
Where the local languages were mostly learned through direct interaction, and English was mostly indirect.
Right.
What else did they find there?
So they point out that direct language input is often considered to be like really important for early language development, right? It's those one-on-one interactions, that back and forth between the caregiver and the baby,
right? That
can really help them, decipher the complexities of language.
So does that mean that like the babies in Accra might have a slight advantage when it comes to learning those local languages?
It's definitely a possibility. But again, this study was just focusing on the language input, not the baby's actual language abilities.
Right.
So more research is needed there to determine if those differences in direct versus indirect input lead to any differences in language outcomes.
Okay, so more research needed.
Yeah.
I'm sensing a theme here.
A little bit, yeah.
But it's fascinating to think about how, like, the way that babies experience language in their environment might shape their linguistic development later on.
Totally. And it's not just about individual languages either, right? This research raises these broader questions about the impact of multilingualism on cognitive development.
I was just thinking about that. We've all heard about the potential cognitive benefits of multilingualism, right?
Yeah.
Is there any evidence to support that?
There is. Some studies have suggested that growing up in a multilingual environment, it might actually give babies a cognitive boost, making them more flexible thinkers.
Interesting.
And better problem solvers.
So it's not just about learning multiple languages. It's about like the potential cognitive advantages that come with navigating that linguistic complexity from such a young age.
And researchers are, still actively exploring this link between multilingualism and cognitive development.
It's amazing.
It's a really interdisciplinary field,
Yeah.
Bringing together linguists, psychologists, neuroscientists, educators.
Wow.
They're all trying to understand this amazing power of multilingualism.
I'm already feeling like I need to go back and relearn everything I thought I knew
Yeah.
about language development.
It's pretty fascinating stuff. So, it's important to remember that every study has limitations, right?
Right.
And the researchers acknowledged that they really just focused on the quantity of language input. They didn't really delve into like the quality of that input.
Right. You mentioned things like code switching and accents.
Yeah.
And the richness of the vocabulary used by the caregivers.
Right.
Those things could also be playing a role.
Absolutely. For example, code switching is when someone switches between two or more languages in a single conversation.
Oh, okay.
So, imagine a caregiver is speaking Aksan.
Yeah.
And then, like, seamlessly throws in a few words of English.
Okay.
It's really cool.
I can see how that would add another layer of complexity to the language learning process.
Absolutely.
It'd be so fascinating to see future research that explores these nuances of language input.
For sure.
And the researchers also pointed out that they didn't gather any information about the caregivers' ethnic backgrounds or their attitudes towards different languages.
Yeah.
Which, makes sense because those things could influence the language choices and the interactions within the family. Each layer we peel back reveals even more to explore.
It really does.
I'm curious about those long-term effects that we were talking about before,
Yeah.
What happens to these babies as they grow up?
Right.
Do they maintain all their languages? Do they develop any unique cognitive abilities because of their early exposure?
Those are all questions that future research can help us answer.
Yeah.
And, this research has implications far beyond Accra, right? It changes how we think about language development and education in any multilingual setting.
It's such a powerful reminder that diversity is a strength.
Yeah.
Not a weakness.
For sure.
Embracing linguistic diversity can really open up a world of possibilities for children.
It's a beautiful message and one that I hope we can all kind of carry with us as we continue to explore this fascinating world of language.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
What a powerful reminder that even the youngest among us can teach us so much about the world.
They really can, and their ability to navigate this world of multiple languages right from the start is it's truly inspiring.
I'm still thinking about all this stuff about babies and multilingualism.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
It is.
What's one key takeaway you hope our listener walks away with from this deep dive?
I think it's just really important to remember that multilingualism isn't this rare phenomenon.
Right.
For a huge portion of the world's population, it's just the norm.
Yeah.
And as we've seen with these incredible babies in Accra, it's something we should celebrate,
That's a beautiful point.
Yeah.
When we embrace linguistic diversity, we really do open ourselves up to new ways of understanding the world, and connecting with others.
Yeah, I mean each language offers a unique perspective, right? A different way of seeing and experiencing life.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired to explore the world of languages even more now.
Yeah.
Any advice for our listener on how to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it can be as simple as striking up a conversation with someone in a language you don't know well.
Right.
Or try listening to music from a different culture or watching a movie with subtitles.
Okay.
You might be surprised at what you discover.
Those are great ideas. I'm a big believer in the power of immersing yourself in different cultures.
Yeah.
Even in small ways.
Totally.
It makes such a difference.
It really does. It's all about opening your mind to new experiences and new perspectives.
Right.
Who knows, you might even inspire a few babies along the way.
That's a wonderful thought. Well, to our listener, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the world of multilingual babies in Accra, Ghana.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you learned something new and that you feel inspired to explore the power of language in your own life.
Absolutely. And remember, there's a whole world of linguistic diversity out there waiting to be discovered.
That's so true.
So happy exploring.
Yeah, happy exploring, everyone.